On today's episode of the Who Is This podcast, we take flight with Cameron Atkins. Cameron is the manager at the newly named Safford Regional Airport, First Lieutenant Spalsbury Field. He's also a member of the Army Reserve. We discuss Cameron's path to becoming the manager at the airport, and then the big plans he has for the future of the airport. Really that guard dog of the sky, and we were excited to chat with him. Enjoy. Yeah, we're excited about today's episode with Cameron Atkins. Cameron, give us a little introduction. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously what everybody knows me for here locally is 2 years ago I took over as the manager for the Safford Airport. And over that time we've been doing quite a lot of different stuff, which I'm sure we'll talk about today. I'm not from Safford. I'm not a Safford native, a Saffordite. I grew up back east and came out west actually to fight wildfire for the Forest Service before I went to college, and then ended up enlisting in the Army and made my way out to Embry-Riddle up in Prescott to get my degree. And other than a brief 12-month stint up in North Dakota, I've been here in Arizona ever since. Don't plan to leave anytime soon.
Did you fight fires for BLM or for the Forest Service?
For the Forest Service, yeah, up in the Dixie National Forest up in Utah. I did a summer up there.
So not here, but
no, not here, but up there, and I really enjoyed it. St. George is a beautiful area, and it was perfect for me because a lot of times when you work wildfire, you are assigned to one forest, but you get sent all over the western U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that entire summer there was a huge fire right there in St. George on the Dixie National Forest, just north of town. So we spent the entire summer fighting that, and it was pretty simple.
So you're on the same fire pretty much the whole summer?
Yeah, the same. It was a pretty large fire, so we were on that fire for I think like 2.5 months.
Oh wow!
And then after that, it was cleanup, because after the fire ends, especially on those huge fires, it's not just we're done. It's a lot of spot fires and fuels management and everything, getting ready to reopen that area for public use, for recreation, and making sure that it's not a hazard as well. And that fire was actually in a wilderness area, so we couldn't use any powered equipment.
Oh,
so,
wow. That's
mules
great.
and buck saws and crosscut saws and axes. So
wow.
No ATVs and chainsaws.
For the whole fire?
For at least for the portion that was in the wilderness area, yeah.
Okay.
So it's a lot of the cleanup afterwards had to be done manually. And
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Did you have any cool? So I did fires for a summer here on Safford's crew, and we didn't ever. The summer that I did it, I never went out of state, but everyone kept saying how lucky I was because I think it was the first fire that I went on, we took a helicopter to. And they're like, that never happens. We're always having to hike in, but it was anyway. So I got to fly in a helicopter one day, or one fire, and I didn't have any huge fires that I was on, but everyone that I was on was a cool experience. Everyone's like, this never happens. You'd be lucking out. But
no, honestly, mine was. I think it was unique in the wilderness aspect of it, because a lot of fires you don't have that. Like on Mount Graham, you wouldn't get that, for example. There really aren't any areas in Mount Graham where you couldn't use powered equipment. So that was slightly unique. It's always interesting when you're responding urgently to a fire and riding a mule.
Yeah.
It's not exactly the most expeditious manner to get to the fire. I think the only thing that was kind of crazy in there that I wasn't really a part of, because obviously I was a lowly guy on a hand crew. I was like a GS5.
That's what I was. Yeah, I was the very entry. Here's your hoe and go dig some line.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think we had a Boy Scout troop that got stuck. They were out in the wilderness area, and so the only exception they made to that rule was they allowed the guard to bring in a Chinook to get those guys out, because they were essentially stuck.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to make it out before the fire closed in. So that was interesting, and would have been cool to be a part of, but I was just kind of sitting there watching it and watching all those kids come back, and they're like, that was awesome. And I'm like, you almost died.
I guess the purpose of a designated wilderness area, right, is just to keep it as wild as possible. And you would think, but you'd think that once there's a wildfire, I guess they
Yeah,
stick to their guns, like they'll let it burn. I guess that's part of nature.
Well, exactly, and that's kind of the idea, and that's what I try to talk to a lot of folks about because they hit the airport up a lot when there's a fire, and they're like, why aren't we fighting it? Like the other day with the fire in the riverbed, and they're like, well, why aren't we putting it out? Well, because there's no reason to.
Yeah. Oh, a lot of times they do more good than
exactly.
harm.
Let it burn out, and especially in those wilderness areas, there are no structures. There's nothing that is threatening. So for the most part, it was we let that area burn. We were a lot more concerned with the area where that fire was up in Pine Valley, and there's a bunch of summer residences up there. So there were a lot of structures we were worried about. So for the most part, we're running masticators and heavy equipment, dozers trying to clear out fire breaks and make sure it doesn't reach the town. But afterwards, you have to go to those wilderness areas and make sure you don't have a bunch of trees that are going to threaten people's lives.
Right.
But it is definitely a transition. You're walking in a normal Forest Service area, and you got fire roads you can walk down that are nice and wide. You can bring a truck down, and then you go in the wilderness areas, and it's a single track, lane that you're walking through, and it's definitely it's beautiful, and I'm glad they keep those areas the way they do. It's really cool.
So you did that for a summer, and then how did you end up in the Gila Valley with the position that you have now?
So following that,
that's a big jump.
Boom, boom.
Yeah. So I was actually 17 when I did that.
Oh, okay. I was thinking it was closer. Okay.
No, I was.
Just tell us the whole.
That was quite
story.
a while ago. So yeah, I was 17. Left home, did that. Actually was able to do that through an internship with SUU, Southern Utah University. And then following that, I was looking at where I wanted to go to college. I had originally applied to some colleges and got in and didn't have the money to go. I didn't get all the scholarships I wanted, so I had to look at what can I do to be able to go to school. And I was lucky enough. I met a gentleman that was able to write scholarships for the Army Reserve. And he said, "Hey, if you want, I can get you a full ride scholarship to any college you want to go to." That's how they get you. But honestly, I think it was worth it. I had already been accepted to Embry-Riddle up in Prescott, and I knew that's where I wanted to go. I always loved aviation, so I ended up going up there, and that school is not inexpensive, and I would have never been able to afford it, even with loans and grants and everything else, without that scholarship.
Well, and then the debt that you're in afterwards.
So, exactly. Awesome. I think the Army paid over $25,000 a semester.
Wow.
For that school. It was kind of crazy, but it was definitely worthwhile. And I'm glad I did that. And so for me, it's I've got an extra job I have to work that pays me to pay off my student loans. So. Yeah. It's not all that bad.
So you going into Embry-Riddle, you knew from the get-go aviation I want some sort of career in aviation.
Yeah, and I
like the exception to the rule, because a lot of times we'll talk to people and it's like, yeah, I went to school for this, but now I'm doing a job that has nothing to do with it, and that's our.
It's nice to see someone that had a
plan
that
followed through and. Here you are working into what you went to school for.
Yeah, well, and I originally started off in school at Riddle, and I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to go fly for the airlines, which is a lot of what Embry-Riddle gets. But kind of similar to that, a lot of students that go to Riddle, they realize very quickly, because the flight program is not covered by any of those GI Bill military scholarships. A lot of the scholarships you get does not cover flight training just because it's so expensive.
Oh, yeah.
To go all the way through, you're looking at least $100,000.
Yeah.
And so that was very quickly the situation I ran into as I was working, a couple of part-time jobs and a full-time job during the summer to try to pay for this, and I realized I can't keep up. Mm-hmm. So I said, you know what, I'm going to focus on doing more of a management side of it, and I can fly for fun. And so that's what I ended up doing. I was in the Army Reserve. I was in a fixed-wing aviation unit out in California. And I said, you know what, I love this. I love doing aviation, but I also love supporting it, and I love being able to do that. And I was lucky enough, my father-in-law, he is on the board for the Sedona Airport, and he introduced me to Mr. Ed Rose, who's the manager for Sedona. And he said, talk to Ed, because I was kind of trying to figure out, I want to do aviation management. What specifically do I want to do? Mm-hmm. And Ed kind of explained to me, here's what goes into airport management as a field. Not a lot of people go into, even inside of aviation. He's like, but it's super fun. You get to do a huge wide gamut of things, and your daily job. Then you get to meet some amazing people, because in aviation, it really opens up a lot of doors, and it's amazing to see the kind of people that come through an airport. You know, the people that walk into a business, you know, versus the people you see come through an airport are totally different.
Yeah.
You know, it's not uncommon during my day-to-day to have you know, Arizona Supreme Court justices come through, or the governor, or senators, congress people, business owners. They fly in and out on a daily basis. So it's just a completely different
the people
world.
that get to skip the Superstition Mountains.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, the people that have enough money or have a position that enables them to fly.
Just a couple of weeks ago, the governor landed in our airport.
Yep. She was out there. So yeah, we were out there to bring the airplane in, and so she comes in. Last weekend for the airport dedication, we had Senator Wendy Rogers and Senator Gowan came in. Senator Rogers actually owns her own airplane. So
she's a pilot, right?
Yes, she is. Yeah, she was a pilot for the Air Force, and I've known her for a little while. And she's got a Cessna 182 that she flies around in. And Ponderosa actually used to do her maintenance on her airplane, so she's relatively familiar with Safford.
Yeah.
But
I used to work at Verizon, and she came in one time, and it was like total. I don't know how to describe it other than like typical politician running for office. She introduced herself. She's like, "Hi, I'm Wendy Rogers, future senator of Arizona." I was like,
"Okay, you know."
I like her, but that was the experience I had.
Well, I'm sure they get into that mindset, and that's what they are.
Yep.
Yeah, especially during
they are on the campaign trail 24/7.
Yeah.
It's not an off button. You can turn it on.
No, Wendy's awesome, but yeah, it's definitely either politics or aviation.
Yeah.
Now, if you know aviation and you talk to her about aviation, she loves that.
Yeah.
And so that's always awesome when you get to talk to somebody like that, especially somebody that has that kind of experience. Obviously, the time she was in the Air Force was a totally different time, especially being a woman. And she's got some really amazing stories. So it's always fun to sit down with her and talk. But yeah, it is always interesting seeing that the disparity between business people and politicians.
Yeah.
You know, two totally different things. The business people come in, their goal is, I want to get to my meeting. I don't care about anything else. I want to get to my meeting as quickly as possible and make money.
Yeah.
Whereas politicians are more than happy to spend the time and say hi and and do handshakes and stuff. So it's kind of interesting seeing those folks come through. But
that is cool.
Yeah.
So you said you had some sort of position in North Dakota before. Was it the same position, or was it?
No. So I actually ended up, Ed Rose, who I mentioned, he recommended looking at some airports up north, because as airport management, you get a lot of different stuff that you have to deal with. And the one thing we don't have to deal with, luckily here, but you do at a lot of airports, is cold weather and snow.
Yeah.
Unlike roads, you can't allow any snow on a runway.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a constant process, and it's a very choreographed process, because anything that you do on a runway or on an airport in general requires a much higher level of safety and coordination. Because you think about it, it's snowing, the pilots already can't see you from less than a mile away, and they're coming in at 200 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So it requires a lot more coordination. So I got the opportunity to go up to Williston Basin International up in North Dakota, about 30 minutes from Montana, 30 minutes from Canada. So about as far north as you can get. Got to -40 during the winter. It was not fun.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
But it was an amazing learning experience, because they built that airport from the ground up in 2017. They started with a field and built a brand new airport.
Okay.
And so it was amazing getting to work there. We had a really amazing manager that really focused on training. So while I was there, I got to do all my training for aircraft rescue firefighting. I got to do training for that to be a weather observer for NOAA for the National Weather Service. So I can give aviation weather observations. I did a whole lot of different training, and really got a good crash course over a 1-year period of here's what it means to run an airport. And then obviously the winters were not fun, and I was kind of looking at, do I really want to be here in another -40-degree winter? And one of my friends down here reached out and said, hey, there's an advertisement for a position down at Safford. It's not on any of the normal websites. It wasn't on it. There are professional organizations for airport
Surprised it was
management.
on any website.
Yeah, it was. I think I initially saw it through like government jobs or something like that. And normally for all the airport positions, they go in through professional organizations that have websites that you can pretty easily search it because it's a very niche market. And went on and ended up applying, and I thought, no, there's no way I'll never get an airport manager position, because I was an airport operations specialist up in North Dakota. So basically the same thing as wildfire, bottom of the ladder. But they needed somebody that knew what they were doing, and they really didn't have that. They had some pilots, I think, that ended up applying, and they said, we're really looking for somebody that knows how to run an airport, not that knows how to fly an airplane.
So who does that hiring? Is it the city of Safford?
It's the city of Safford,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, so I was hired by the city manager and the public works director, who used to be my boss, the public works. I used to fall into public works, and now I've fallen to the city manager directly.
Gotcha.
But they brought me on, and their goal was to see the airport grow. They had seen, the city manager in particular saw the airport as an untapped resource. And so they said, hey, we haven't had a manager out there for 20 years. We really need to be more active with our management of the airport. We've got some new businesses out there that are starting to really grow. As a city, it's our airport. We need to manage it. And we need to not just leave it up to private businesses. That would be like, having a main street that's run by the businesses, not government, essentially. And we wanted to encourage growth and development, and the only way to do that is to have somebody actually, that's their job. So they brought me on, obviously, to manage major projects out there. We get a lot of funding from the FAA and ADOT to do maintenance on the airport. So that's kind of part of my job is managing those projects, and managing day-to-day operations, working with tenants, but also doing a lot of economic development as well. And I think over the last 2 years, we've come leaps and bounds over what's happened in the last 20 years out there. So we're pretty excited.
Yeah, well, I know that it's definitely been a hot topic. It's been talked about a lot more recently. One of the major things that I keep hearing about is the potential of trying to do commercial flights out there. Are you involved with that at all, or are you a major part of that, or?
So that was kind of that's my pet project.
Okay.
So that was actually, I think during my interview, that was one of the questions that I brought up is, have you examined options to bring in air service into Safford? And they said, no, we really haven't. I know that's something we want to look at eventually, but we don't even know where to start. And so that was kind of one of my projects coming in, is there's relatively limited federal programs to help with that, because as with anything, it's not free. Even trying to bring in a new airline like that's going to charge passengers, the city still has to be able to provide incentives. So what we've done over the last couple of years, we've gotten $250,000 in funding between the city and Freeport. Freeport really wants this to happen. They currently actually use one of the airlines we're looking at to do charter operations into Clifton and into Safford on a pretty regular basis. And they obviously want to cut their costs. They're looking at how can we affect our bottom line?
Right.
And they look at, well, would we rather pay a $250 round trip ticket to Phoenix, or would we rather pay $7,000 or $8,000 for a charter for one day? So it's, in the grand scheme of things, it makes a lot of sense for them. So we're pursuing some federal grant funding right now. We really need to get closer to about $1 million in total funding to make this happen, with the goal of getting a 19 to 30 seat aircraft going to Phoenix once a day. Is our current goal. So,
and is that going to be mainly available for like Freeport employees, or is that eventually anyone that wants to?
It's going to be open to the public.
And a lot of people will think, Phoenix is just right there. I can just drive 3 hours, hop in there. But if you think about it, it's worth paying an extra $100 or $200 if you're not going to have to go through security in Phoenix, right? Because you would go through it here.
Not initially.
Okay. So that might be a future goal. Okay.
It takes a little bit to get TSA set up. It's a little bit of a process, but honestly, Phoenix Sky Harbor is actually set up to take what we call non-sterile flights, meaning passengers haven't been screened yet through TSA. There are a lot of communities like Silver City, New Mexico. They have flights to Phoenix that leave 4 times a day, I think, or And they go
What?
twice a day
know
to
that.
twice a day to Albuquerque, twice a day to Phoenix.
Really?
No way.
Yeah, they get a federal subsidy. So there's a program called Essential Air Service that came about.
How do they qualify for that? And
So
Safford
it's-
doesn't.
so that's a
Silver
long-
City is bigger than we are, right?
So Silver City is smaller, actually, pretty
I
significant.
should know that because I
Yeah.
go to Silver City all the time.
Silver City's population is actually significantly smaller. I think they're about half the size of Graham County.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I don't know the exact population, but I'm guessing Silver City is probably bigger than Thatcher, but probably not the whole area.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think right now, Graham and Greenlee County, we're at about 50,000
Yeah.
total. And I think the last time I looked at I forget what county, Silver
Grant
City.
County.
Yeah, Grant, thank you, is like 26 or 30, something like that.
Yeah.
So we're I think the reservation obviously brings in a lot of that. But no, so back in the 60s, or prior to the 60s, airlines were regulated at the federal level and they actually bid out routes. So instead of having 8 flights a day on different airlines going from, for example, Phoenix to Atlanta, you would have one airline that runs all of those routes, unless it's a really high density route. But then you also had a lot of what we call a milk run. So, for example, Safford used to have air service on Frontier Airlines, not the Frontier you know today, but they flew DC-3s. So they flew twin prop airplanes, and they went from El Paso to Las Cruces, New Mexico, to Deming, Silver City. I think they stopped in Lordsburg maybe as well. Clifton, Safford, Globe,
Just
and
have
then
all the towns on
Yep.
between El Paso and Phoenix.
Yep, exactly. So everything along that I-10 corridor got a stop. But after the airlines were deregulated in the 60s, they were, or maybe it was even the 80s, I believe. I'm either forgetting 68 or 86. They decided, the airlines said, hey, this doesn't make sense. We were making a lot more money on higher density direct routes between hubs. And that's where you get this hub and spoke model we have today, where you have smaller airlines feeding into the big hubs in Phoenix, Atlanta, LA, and then the major flights going out from there in between the larger communities. And a lot of areas lost their service, and the federal government recognized that, hey, if we do this, small communities are going to die, especially really remote ones in the western U.S. So they instituted a program called the Essential Air Service Program, and essentially it subsidizes air service on a federal level. But you had to have had it before 2012. And as part of not having a
10
manager.
years too young.
Yep, exactly. So there are several communities in Arizona that get it. Show Page, and Prescott all get subsidized air service. There are some proposals that have always been floated around to reopen that program and reconsider also some of the larger communities that really don't need a subsidy anymore. That have grown. Prescott would be probably a pretty good example of a community that really doesn't need a subsidy any longer. And then communities that still do, like Sholo or Safford or maybe even Sierra Vista, Silver City, obviously. So unfortunately, we're not able to get that subsidy, so we have to look at doing what's called an MRG, or minimum revenue guarantee, where essentially you go to the airline and you offer them, hey, for the first year or two of operations, we have a pot of $1 million on a monthly basis. You let us know, here's how much money I made in ticket sales. Here's the contractually agreed upon revenue guarantee. If there's a disparity between the two, then the city will essentially pay the difference. And that is a really good encouragement for a lot of those airlines. Oftentimes you don't end up spending the whole pot, but it's there in case.
Right.
Because it's quite costly for some of those airlines to start operations when you take an aircraft and dedicate it to a route typically, and you have to hire, baggage agents and have gate space at some of the larger airports. So I think there are a few airlines we're looking at right now that all seem relatively interested. We just have to get the funding to make it happen.
Well, going back to like the cost for the passenger, one of the things I was thinking about was I just went to Florida for a few days and I had to park somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Parking
Yep.
It used to be, between like $5 and $7 a day.
No.
Now it's almost $20 a day.
Yeah.
So it's like, if I don't have to park there, I'm saving all this money on parking.
The money on gas, the time alone.
The 6-hour round trip.
Yeah.
That you have to,
I mean, if it could get to the point where you don't have to go through, if you could go through security here, and then that makes a ton of sense. That'd be awesome.
Well, and even what we're looking at is exactly that point in Safford. So we are building a new terminal at the airport. So we'll have increased space. We'll have more parking area. So you can park for free at the airport here in Safford.
Cool. Yeah.
So no charge. Hop on your flight, go to Phoenix, which you only have to show up 30 or 40 minutes before your flight because there is no security and you're on a small flight. So you throw your bag on, you go. Once you get to Phoenix, they kick you out right into TSA. So you're right there. You literally walk out and you're in the TSA checkpoint. TSA at Phoenix is fast. You're out in and out of there in under 15 minutes, and you hop on your flight. Obviously, eventually, we'd love to have look at doing TSA. It really just depends on the routes and what makes sense.
But even it's still a time saver. And even if you did charge for parking here, it's here. You have family here that can drop you off.
Right.
It's just so much.
It's a lot easier for me to get a ride.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
This airport.
Yeah. I need you to take me and drop me off. I'll ride my bicycle out there.
Right. Yeah.
It's easy. So that's definitely what we're looking at. We are planning on when we do have service, putting like what's called a true cost calculator on the airport website, where you can put in, if I flew out of Phoenix, here's the IRS mileage rate, for example, on driving my vehicle because wear and tear on my vehicle and the gas. And then parking, and maybe if it's an early morning flight, I have to have a hotel the night before, and food and everything else.
Hotels. Every time we fly, I have to, and I'm with my family. Last time I just went by myself, but if I'm with my family, every time we have to get a hotel the night before. There's $150 right there.
Right. Well, another thing, so whenever we go on, whenever we have events in Kalispell or wherever we're going, our travel time, we're sharing flights with a lot of the same people, but they're getting to their destination and then they're there. Our travel time, they're like, oh, you have another 3-hour drive still. You're not done traveling yet. So that would be awesome to be able to hop on another flight.
And especially with all the construction going on right now on the reservation, where for the other day, there's a fire, and now you have to go through Tucson, or when the bridge is out.
Yeah, exactly.
And that adds at least another hour. It opens up a lot for businesses, because obviously businesses care about that time,
right?
A lot more than somebody that wants to go and fly on Spirit or Frontier or Allegiant to go to a vacation destination. Then it probably still makes sense to drive. But for those folks that it's really, do I want to spend 6 or 7 hours out of my day driving?
Right.
I think it makes a ton of sense. Do you get much pushback on this idea from different, from people that are out at the airport? a lot of people don't like change. Do you get much pushback?
I have seen that a little bit. There are a few people that have been out there for a long time, and I think that's really been about educating them on what this is actually going to look like for them. That this is not going to affect your ability to use the airport at all. This is going to add maybe 2 flights a day. That's it. The student pilots that come in from Phoenix and fly around the pattern for hours at a time are, far more impacting your ability to use the airport than 2 flights a day would.
Right.
This is going to be on a completely separate portion of the airport. It's going to be away from you. And also explaining that the reality is it's the Safford airport, not their airport. This is a community resource. It's funded by tax dollars from the community. And so it needs to be a resource for the whole community, not just people that own aircraft.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's part of their concern is, it starts with 2 flights a day, but that's where it starts, and then it grows. But I'm always I'm always pro growth, with anything really. People, same thing with when people hear about new subdivisions around town, or people don't like change, but growth is good. It really is, and unfortunately, some people, not everyone agrees with that, but that's my own belief. Growth is good, and I think that it'd be awesome to have 2 flights a day now, but eventually, let's be honest, Safford is going to hopefully keep growing, and that's a resource that would be very good to have.
I think it's the people that are anti-growth that are keeping the growth from happening. like it should be happening.
Yeah.
Right? I think there's so much red tape right now that you have to get through because there's a lot of pushback from.
And I will say, honestly, at least from my perspective, kind of seeing inside, there is not a lot of red tape. For example, we're doing development for businesses out at the airport. I can turn a lease and a building permit around typically in under 30 days.
Yeah.
Which is unheard of.
Wow.
So like we just got Bridgestone, the tire company out at the airport.
Is that because it's such a small airport, or why is it such a quick turnaround time?
It's because of the city.
So Safford's just good with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for me, the city council's actually been great at removing some of the red tape. So for example, now instead of me having to take into each individual lease back to city council for approval, they said, hey, we established a set rate and fee schedule that we have for the airport. We're charging per square foot for the ground. You're able to handle that internally and administratively and get those approved.
So it's pre-approved essentially with regulations that they give you.
We have a policy that governs their application process and what we need to gather from them. So instead of city council just having to rubber stamp it, they've essentially done that already. And they place a lot more of that burden on myself and the city manager to make sure, and the planning community development director. And then of course there's no zoning at the airport. So that helps a lot. We are going to be doing industrial out there, so it'll be super easy. And then building permits they don't take that long. It's 2 pages of paper.
Well, that's cool. That's good on Safford for making it easy like that.
Yeah. Well, and even like we've got that development going in over by the high school, townhomes that are going to be going in over there. And even that process, it did require a rezone because I believe it was already residential, but they had to change the type to make it multifamily. But even that was relatively easy, and that's a conversation that we've had is, folks say, well, it's hard to develop in Safford. Well, tell us what is actually hard to develop in Safford, because on the city side, we're trying to do everything we can to encourage it. So please explain to us what can we do better? And honestly, the answer we've gotten is I think it's a lot of misconceptions from companies that go, it's a small town, it's got to be hard.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's really not. It's if you look at doing developments in Phoenix and just the cost associated versus the cost here with doing a building permit application and everything, it's so much cheaper. The city runs all the utilities, so it's far less expensive than anything you would get in a large city. So even for the developer looking to connect utilities and everything, it's minuscule compared to what you'd see. And so
come to Safford.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, come develop in Safford, and that's, I think, the big success we've had at the airport is exactly that. We have cheap lease rates. We're charging in the business park specifically, we're charging 15 cents a square foot a year. There's no property tax because the city owns the property and it's leased, and it's a 3% annual escalator on that, or on some of them it's 15% every 5 years. And we're able to do 49-year leases.
Wow.
So for some of those companies that are looking to develop, it's actually pretty hard to find large pieces of commercial property here. I know it's for Bridgestone. The reason they came out to us is I think it was Keyhole that they were working with to try to find a lot, and they just couldn't find anything. They kept running into zoning issues, and so they came out to the airport and I said, I can get you a lease signed as soon as you want. And I've got acreage out here. I've got, not only that, I've got credits for extending utilities, because I think they're going to have to spend $20,000 or $30,000 extending utilities to the lot.
So what is Bridgestone doing? Are they
all the haul truck tires for the mine?
Okay.
So yeah, all those.
So they're leasing a spot that's not necessarily aviation related.
Correct. Yeah,
okay.
we've got 400 acres outside of the airport that's city property that we're doing industrial development with. Because we could never use it for aviation development. It's across a road from the runways.
Does that involve them building new building? Okay.
Yep. So they're going to be building a new facility out there. So GCR's operations on Safford Bryce Road is moving out to the airport.
Okay.
So they signed their lease actually.
What's GCR?
It's GCR. It's owned by Bridgestone. They do all the haul truck tire repair for the mine.
Their logo's red GCR. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So all those huge haul truck tires, Bridgestone has a mining division, and they sell those tires to Freeport. But obviously they're $55,000 a piece. I believe. So they need to be able to repair them, and they frequently get damaged. So they're going to bring those huge tires in. They're going to have storage. They're getting 4 acres at the airport, and they're going to have area for storage, and they're building a brand new facility out there.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So Camden, let's say there's just somebody that owns a private plane, they can
Yep.
release a spot.
Yep, and we have
What
that
are the
too.
limitations for what they can do with
So
their spot?
what we typically see is,
Because it's a 49-year lease.
so for the aviation ones, we typically do 20 years with
Oh,
extensions
okay.
on them.
Yeah.
But so for example, with those, we have quite a few private hangars that are going in. So we have the option, either the city is building T hangars, which are essentially a storage unit for a single airplane, or you can build your own in the airport, whether you're a business or you're just a private individual that wants a hangar. And what we typically see is, depending on the size, obviously everything from a 40 by 40 metal box to put an airplane in, or all the way up to a 12,000 square foot building with office space and warehouse space and
What about living space?
no.
No living space.
Yeah, no living space. So the Federal Aviation Administration has grant assurances that we have to comply with, and one of those is the only people that can actually live on the airport would be the airport manager, and then you can have crew quarters for emergency personnel. So
Yeah.
medevac crews, wildfire crews, as part of their job. But we have run into that in the past, where we actually had somebody living on the airport and we had to go through an eviction process for that.
I totally see someone doing that, renting out and just throwing a bed in their hangar, and
Yep.
it's not surprising
And
at all.
it's actually pretty popular. There are a lot of air parks
They do allow that.
that do allow
There's
that.
one here, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's where I was kind of getting to is High Mesa. I've done a guy built a barn dominium, but the barn portion was this hangar.
Yes.
It's kind of
okay.
cool.
Yeah. So we are looking at being able to do that because we do have that acreage I mentioned that kind of wraps around the airport is actually city property. So the difference being the airport itself was built by the Army Air Corps during World War II, and we have a patent signed by the Secretary of Interior and the Secretary of War from the 40s giving the airport to the city. And part of that requirement is that we have to comply with all the FAA regulations. However, we own property around the airport that is not subject to those regulations. So we are looking at, similar to what Payson has done in the past, potentially doing a residential air park. The advantage there is, as I'm sure you've seen down at High Mesa is extremely basic. It is a dirt runway
Yeah.
that's actually in pretty terrible condition and doesn't get used very often, versus
I've never been out there.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I
Yeah.
just know it's there.
Where is
Yeah.
it?
It's like if you go down Barney Lane
Mhm.
in Solomon, you just keep going south.
Okay.
And you eventually end up, you go up a hill and it's,
Yeah, see, I didn't realize I was doing that there.
yeah.
I think they only have, well, now one of the airports out of there just got bought, and I think there's like 2 left.
Yeah.
It's very many. And what we've heard from folks when they look at coming in, because we've had a couple folks look at, do I want to build a hangar at the airport or do I want to go out to High Mesa? And the reality is they look at, okay, the airport has crosswind runways because you always land into the wind. So you've got a lot more flexibility there. You've got 6,000 feet of paved asphalt with lights, instrument approaches so you can land in bad weather. You've got fuel on the airport. You've got a paint shop on the airport. You've got good facilities. You've got everything's there versus High Mesa.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at is in the future we could expand our access so that people could build their own.
Yeah.
So we'd be
Like a
interested.
hybrid air park kind of thing.
Yeah. Payson Airport does exactly that. They have what they call a through the fence access. So they literally have a gate that you have a garage door clicker for, and you can open it for your airplane, and you can go onto the airport. And so we're looking at that. That'd be something we'd have to find the right developer for and move forward on that. But obviously doesn't fix Safford's housing crisis, but it is a good opportunity for us to attract some individuals.
Yeah.
And I think we've got about 70 acres we could probably use out there for residential development. So that's one of the major things we're looking at this year. We're in the process of starting a strategic business plan for the airport. So we're looking at what do we want to use different areas for, and what's the best way we can generate revenue. Because ultimately the airport should be self-sufficient. You want the airport's a business, just like the utility division is. You need to make sure it's generating revenue, and ultimately the city taxpayer shouldn't have to fund it. It should self-fund itself.
Yeah.
And in fact, it should be. It is already generating a lot of tax revenue for the city through sales tax. But we want to continue to do that and encourage that. So as we bring even more of these non-aviation commercial businesses in, like Bridgestone, every time they sell a tire, city generates sales tax on that, which is good because that goes back to the city. So we're starting to see a lot more.
Do you have like a goal or a timeline as far as the commercial flights for that to be in effect?
So if everything goes as planned and we get the federal grant we're applying for, we would probably see a grant award in October before the election. And then it would just depend on a timeline with the airlines on when they wanted to implement.
On the companies that are actually
yeah, the best times to implement air service are typically before the holidays or before the summer. However, out here, given the nature of this being primarily focused on business users, we're not as worried about a timeline.
So you think that if that grant happens in October, so I mean, you potentially start doing commercial flights within the next year or two?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the goal. Is
that's really cool.
Within 12 to 18 months at the most. Hopefully sooner, because we've already worked with a lot of these airlines, and so once we get the funding, it's really just a matter of sitting down and negotiating and figuring out what their timeline and availability of aircraft is to actually implement.
Wow, that's super cool. Now, so you guys just had an event out there, changing the airport name, right?
Correct.
What's the story behind that?
So this kind of started back in November. The city implemented a naming policy with a focus really on the parks that we're building at El Paso Park and 8th and Discovery, because we wanted to have a real policy for how we implement commemorative naming. In the past, we've done some different stuff, but we haven't really had a guiding policy for how we implement that. So the city manager really drove that and got a new policy put in place. And then I brought up, a lot of airports have they're named after somebody influential in the community. Do we want to look at that? And the resounding answer was yes. So we went out to the community. We accepted nominations. We ended up getting three nominations that met our requirements. And then we sat down with the families. We had a work session with council with the families there. And ultimately, council ended up selecting Dwayne Spalsbury. Not a lot of people now know who Dwayne was. He was a World War II fighter pilot. After he came back from the war, he became an accountant and came to Safford and started his practice here. He actually ended up selling his business to Ron Tolman, who now owns CMI. But one of the biggest things he's known for here is he got the hospital built.
Oh, wow.
So he, through his connections, they were looking for a spot to build the hospital. And he ended up getting one of his clients to donate the property. And then he also served as the chairman for the hospital board for over 20 years.
That's super cool.
But not a lot of people knew him because he wasn't very vocal. He wasn't the kind of guy that really wanted a lot of attention. He was there in the background and spent a lot of time out at the airport. He had airplanes for about 40 years out there and was constantly flying, was involved in a lot of the initial improvement projects out at the airport. So we felt it was a very deserving namesake.
Yeah.
And we're really excited about it. Plus
That's cool, yeah.
And we've got a new logo, and it's no longer sad. So,
yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say that. The airport will always be KSAD, but the logo is no longer sad. So,
is the logo the one that's on your truck?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I noticed that walking in today. So
Yeah.
that's pretty sharp.
Yeah.
So who designed that?
That was Dylan McGoy. Did that one. So yeah, he did a really good job on that. He does all the posters for all the special events in town and stuff too.
Okay.
So yeah, he did a really good job. We wanted to integrate the mountain and not just the two lines that the city has in the logo. We wanted to do a little bit more stylistic, and then the P-38 as well, because Dwayne flew a P-38 Lightning, which is a relatively unique aircraft.
That's cool. That's super cool.
Yeah.
I love stories like that.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool too because it ties it back to the community, and it really, one of our things was, it helps preserve what he did, but also, there's an entrance on the airport. Everything's on the website, on Facebook. So when somebody looks at that, they're going to go, "Who is this guy?" Maybe do a little bit of research. There's some information on the airport website, and especially for young kids that are interested in pursuing aviation, it's great. I guess somebody they can look up to and really a good example.
Yeah, that's what's so cool about small towns and
Mm-hmm.
the community taking care of itself, helping the community grow. Someone like that played such a big part in getting the hospital here, and which is a huge staple for Safford. I mean, one of the very big employers.
Yep.
So that's cool that Safford did something like that to recognize that individual. That's really cool.
Yeah. No, exactly. And it was kind of interesting because the policy was designed to help name the parks. We still haven't named the parks. We're working on it. Or I should say the Parks and Rec Committee is, but it was kind of funny. We implemented this for the parks and ended up naming the airport first.
That's cool. That also stuff like that is never easy too, because you're making you're making one family super happy, and I'm sure other families are pretty disappointed, and that's just part of life, is you're never going to make everybody happy. But, so that'd be a hard committee to be on, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think the ultimate decision, obviously, City Council made it, and Councilman Lopez was the one that ended up.
Good old Arnold.
Yeah, Arnold ended up moving forward. Dwayne, he actually knew Dwayne.
Okay.
But we had 3 nominees. We had Mr. Lyle Grant from Pima. We had Dwayne, and then we had Levin Farron from, or actually I think Levin Farron was from Pima, and Lyle Grant was from Thatcher. So we had one nominee from each community, and I believe Mr. Grant already has a park named after him in Thatcher, and I think Mr. Farron might have something as well in Pima. I'm not sure, but ultimately Arnold's idea was, let's name it after somebody from Safford.
Makes sense.
And I think it really it was a good selection and helps carry it forward. Obviously there are 3 communities in the valley, but it's the Safford. It's the Safford Airport. Let's name it after from Safford.
Well, it sounds like he was very deserving. It sounds like that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a cool story. Story behind the name now.
See, that's something I would never have known.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit. How do you like Safford? Because you've been here for a couple of years now, and it sounds like you're doing a great job out at your job. Are you planning on sticking around for a while? Like, do you have a family, kids? What?
I'm married. No kids yet. But no, we love it here. And
where's your wife from?
My wife is from her family's up in Sedona. She was actually raised in the Bay Area in California.
Okay.
But we love Arizona. We don't want to leave, and that was kind of our thing. Is no matter what, we want to stay in Arizona. But I do like small towns. Obviously, you don't have some of the amenities you would in larger towns, but you don't have the traffic.
But when you have a plane, you can fly there.
That's right. Yeah.
You can go where you need to go.
Yeah, 40 minutes to get over to Phoenix. So 40 minutes to get to Tucson.
That's a good date night.
Yeah, exactly. It's really not that bad. Airplanes do open up the world. I think it makes everything different, especially in the West.
Yeah.
When you worry about mountains and stuff like that.
I've always wanted to get my pilot's license.
Dude,
I think everybody says that, but I'm one of those people. It'd be so cool. My wife's always like, no, like you can't. I don't want you to do it. It's dangerous. And I'm like, that'd be fine.
Safer than driving.
How often do you fly personally?
Probably about once a week.
Yeah. Just for fun, just buzzing around, or do you?
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, sometimes my buddies and I'll just fly around. Sometimes I'll go fly somewhere to have lunch. And
do you own your own plane, or do you have?
I rent somebody else's. Yeah.
So you need to convince the city of Safford to have their own plane. I mean, if you get a work vehicle, you get a work airplane.
I've joked about that because there are programs through the federal government where you can actually get surplus aircraft donated. Helicopters and airplanes, either from the military or another police department, federal agency. I said, the police department really needs an airplane. We should get an airplane.
Heck yeah.
Couldn't use it for personal stuff, but we really need an airplane. It'd be fun. I keep joking about that, but who knows? Maybe one.
I think that the airport manager needs an airplane. He said
I keep joking about that. I'm like, just buy an airplane. I'm more than happy to fly council to conferences.
Seriously.
I'll be the pilot for the city, but
that's got to make financial sense at some point, right? Like if you did the math, all the time you travel, I think if you really put your head to that, I'm sure you can make it make sense.
Oh yeah, well I was joking about that because obviously Ponderosa has their jet and they do charters and stuff like that.
Yeah,
charters are expensive. I'm like, you can get a nice piston prop airplane and still go 150 to 200 knots and be able to get to Phoenix pretty quick and that'd be perfect.
Yeah.
How about that? The entrance, right? Too like Safford. Well, stand out a little bit. Safford got their own private plane going to these, the League of Cities and stuff.
Yeah.
Safford's flying in.
Red,
Just paint it blue to the city logo.
Yeah, put the logo on it.
Is Ponderosa the biggest company out there?
Yeah,
That's what I always hear about.
I would say by far they are. I think they're approaching 100 employees now.
Oh wow!
In total.
Whoa.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I've done loans for probably 5 or 6 of their employees, but I didn't realize that they were that big.
Yeah.
I've been out. They got a newer facility. They remodeled everything. Trenton Nelson. I'm sure. I'm good friends at Trenton, and I went out and he showed me his office. I'm super jealous of his office. His office is sweet. He's got big old windows overlooking the runway, and think that guy's living it up over there. So.
Yeah.
It's been so long since I've been there. My dad he's a paramedic and he used to work for Airvac, and they have their little base right across the street.
That base is going away.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, we're building them a new hangar on the airport. So the city is, as part of what we're trying to do to get towards self-sufficiency, we're building hangars for businesses. So we're trying to get them that Airvac building is a mobile building that's 10 years old. And they really want to have something.
10 years old? I was older than that.
Yeah, it's at least that's what I heard is it's about 10 years old, and they need something better. So we're moving them on the airport and building them a nice hangar.
Oh, cool. Yeah, but I mean, other than going to the Airvac trailer, it's been so long since I've been to the airport to see what's actually out there. So I guess I need to take a trip.
Shameless plug, come out to the air show on November 9th.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because you brought that up to me.
Yeah, and it's 8:58.
No, we're good. I got time. So so we're super excited. So last year we did the airfare, and the difference with that versus what we're doing this year is last year we couldn't do really anything up in the air. The FAA has specific rules on aerobatic performances, and there's a lot of requirements for that. You have to actually shut down the airspace, and you have to have somebody out there controlling all the aircraft, and there's a lot of safety planning that goes into that. But this year, after the success of last year, I think last year we had about 3,000 people out at the airport. This year we said, you know what, we really need to do a full air show. We haven't done one in 20 or 30 years.
I remember they did one when I was young, but I remember going out to it. All I remember is blue airplanes flying around doing loops. So you're actually going to go full out air show,
full on air show. So we've got, I think right now we've got 11 or 12 performers lined up. Some military stuff, some civilian stuff, some jets, some airplanes, some helicopters, some stuff you can take rides on, parachute demonstrations. And it's pretty cool to see the airport community come together on this.
Yeah.
So it's been great. We're getting sponsorships in. Ponderosa Aviation is our presenting sponsor for the air show. So we got that locked in. But we are looking for more sponsors to.
Where can I get information on that as far as sponsorships? So
if you go on flysafford.com, there's a tab for the airfare and air show, and then there's a drop down right on there for sponsorships.
November, great time of year to do that too.
Perfect.
Cool. The weather.
Veterans Day weekend.
Okay.
Yeah, we did the last one on October 14th, and it was still hot by about noon, 1 p.m. It got pretty toasty.
Yeah.
So we said, that's the perfect time of year. It's at the end of the season, so it's a lot easier for us to get some of the bigger name military acts that we're still working on getting in, namely the A-10 demo team. This is their last year. They're phasing out the A-10s. So the A-10 demo team is going away, but they're based out of Davis-Monthan. And so we're currently working on trying to make Safford their final performance.
And that's cool.
Yeah, that would be a really cool addition to the show. But yeah, we've got some amazing stuff. All the performers are up on the airport website.
So 3,000 people showed up to the other one. Probably expecting a lot more to this one because you're doing a lot more.
At least 10,000.
Yeah. Where do they park? I mean,
we're going to create a parking lot.
that sounds like, that's a lot of people.
We have to create a dirt parking lot. We've got plenty of space, but we have to create a new dirt parking lot.
A show like that's gonna, bring people from out of town too.
Yes.
Yep. So that's cool. Is that something that you think that you'll make like an annual theme maybe?
Yes.
Or
that's kind of the goal is we're using this one to test the waters, test the budget, figure out exactly how much this is going to cost and where we can grow it.
And is that like a income generating type of event?
It will generate a little bit, but it's designed to just cover the costs of the event, and then build up a little bit to cover planning for next year.
Okay.
So, because we're going to generate some money in sponsorships, and then we are going to charge for entrance, something small. Like I know for sure veterans are going to be free, but we're looking at between $5 and $10.
So cheap.
Piece.
Yeah, you could get away with doing it 3 times that much. I'm sure people would still come. So that's
it's
awesome.
something to do. Like we always complain here about things to do, and this is cool. Like
it's something different. That's not just a normal City Hall lawn event. It's something different.
Right.
Well, something like that, you've almost always you got to travel to Phoenix or Tucson, So that's cool to have something to that scale right in our backyard. That'll be cool. Put it on your calendar because I definitely want to go to that.
Yeah, we're excited. But in the meantime, even before that happens, we're trying to add food out at the airport because that's one of the big things you typically see at smaller airports like Payson, Page, Show Low, Prescott, is they try to have food either at the airport or nearby.
Like a cafeteria or
like a restaurant.
Okay, so bring it out.
Yeah, so
what we really need is another burger place in this town.
Pizza place.
Just joking.
Yeah.
If you put something like that, that's fine. I'll still go. But
so what we're trying to do, so for now, so starting tomorrow, every Friday and Saturday, the Nana's Kitchenette food truck will be out at the airport.
Okay.
Because really, when you look at aviation, the best time to fly is in the morning. So we're going to do breakfast and lunch.
Okay.
And they're going to be up there until about 4 p.m.
Hey,
that's
great breakfast burros.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know. Yeah.
So food meaning like it's like a food truck. Will it ever be like an actual restaurant opening up? Is that the goal?
That's the goal. Is probably in September you should see request for proposals go out because my office is moving, and so the existing airport terminal will become available. So we're going to try to look at options to.
So how does that work? You just put it out to the community. We have this space available. Who wants to open up a restaurant, and then kind of see what happens. Yeah,
we have a leasing policy already in place, so we put it out on the airport website for 30 days on a rotating basis and request proposals. The one cool thing about the airport is we have set charges for everything. So I think what we're looking at doing for the restaurant that would be different from most of the other facilities on the airport is instead of charging a flat rent, it would be a percentage of profits.
Okay.
That way it encourages the airport to help market and bring folks into.
And less risky for the restaurant.
Less risky for the restaurant, exactly. Yeah, it's something where they're looking at, hey, at least my rent, is it a fixed cost? Because really where the airport generates a lot more revenue off of a restaurant is actually folks flying in and buying fuel.
Yeah.
So it's a good draw. It's an added amenity.
It'd be nice to be able to, while you're fueling up, go get some food.
Yeah.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yep. Exactly.
What, on average, this might be an impossible question, but do you have an idea about what like the average, how many people are out there on the average day?
Yeah, so it's seasonal. So during the year, we have about 200 people a day that work on the airport. During the summer, it goes up to about 250 to 300 during wildfire season.
Yeah.
So just depending on how many folks are out there working. Like right now, we don't have any helicopters in, so we're probably close to the 250 mark. But during the summer, when we're in full swing, we could be hitting 400 people a day. It really depends.
So it sounds like it's just going to keep growing.
Yep.
I mean, once there's a Bridgestone facility out there.
Yeah, Bridgestone's out there.
And
Ponderosa Metalworks is out there now. They're doing metal fabrication. Their building's up. Drip is out there. They use the airport. They've got a laydown yard for all of they're doing drip irrigation at a bunch of the farms. We've got a bunch of different.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to have a restaurant out there.
Yeah, it really does. So we're looking at trying to add that. So we'll probably put out a request for proposals, mainly breakfast and lunch. And I think really breakfast would be awesome to have, because I think your current options are Jerry's, Denny's, or depending on the day of the week, maybe Genevieve's. Yeah. So there's really not a ton. And even to be honest, at lunch, everything's busy. I think we tried to go to lunch yesterday and Casa Mañana, the parking lot was full. I couldn't find a parking spot. And there was a huge wait to get in there. JD's is busy. There's, El Charro's busy. So it's really a question of, adding something else, especially close to the mine. Because the Clay Barrow pit is right there down the road from us. And, it's not that far outside of town. So.
Well, you have the branding iron that's out there across the river, which is a fun sit-down restaurant to go to. But it'd be awesome to have another nice sit-down restaurant to get good dinner or breakfast.
If it's good, it's not going to be limited to people that work at the airport.
Oh yeah.
Meg's place, for example, it is right on the highway, but my wife and I, we travel to Meg's place to go eat there because it's good and it's a good environment.
Well, the branding iron's all the way out across the river, but it's good food, and so that's a good date night. That's something that we do every now and then. So if it's a good restaurant, it'll get business, and I'm sure it'd be cool to have that atmosphere and of being out at the airport. I think that's awesome.
Well, and what I really want them to do is have something that's their specialty. I think like breakfast burritos would be awesome or something like that. Because, like for example, Payson, their thing is pies. That airport cafe there has the best pies you'll ever find. So people fly in there to get pie, like either to bring home or just to have some. They also have everything else.
My mom should open a restaurant there. She makes the best pie.
But you find something that you're known for, and you do it really well. Sedona has an amazing restaurant that obviously is if it's Sedona, it's ritzy and nice, and Prescott has one that's very much. A lot of them are like diner style. It's kind of old timey. It kind of feels like more of a
that's what I'm imagining. That's what I'm imagining out there at the airport or something like that. I think that'd be super cool.
Well, that's what we're looking at too, because the building that it's going to go in is a concrete block building that was built in the 40s by the Army. It's been remodeled a few times, and and it currently has my office and some bathrooms in there. It's only 1,000 square feet, but it's got some good outdoor seating area. It's right on the parking lot, and it's actually.
Can you see the runways from it?
Yes.
Yeah, so
it's right there at the intersection.
I would love to go eat and watch some airplanes land. That'd be fun. The kids would love to go to a restaurant like that.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we're thinking of is,
that's what I hope. I hope they do like a sit-down restaurant. That'd be awesome.
Have some nice outdoor tables, some umbrellas, and some indoor seating too. And I think it'll go great. And even for, doing a little bit of takeout too for some of the airport employees. But no, we're hoping, we're trying to get more food trucks out there. Because like I mentioned, Anna's will be out there Fridays and Saturdays to serve more of a few of the employees on Fridays, and then also the fly-in crowd that just wants to somewhere to fly in and have breakfast on Saturdays. We're hoping to find some more to kind of fill out that week and then see how it goes.
Which food trucks have you talked to?
So far, I've spoken to a few. I know I've spoken to Duck's Barbecue. I've spoken to trying to think who else. I know Hitos El Choyo was out there. We found that was a little bit more dessert, and folks wanted a little bit more, something they could actually
talk to Bees. They do they have really good food. I know the owner of that truck. If you need a contact number,
yeah, absolutely.
But I don't know if they're not out as much as a lot of the other ones, but they might be interested in it. So definitely call them.
Yeah, no, we've got a few folks that have already expressed some interest if we put in a restaurant. And, I'm hoping it'll go well, and especially once we get the new terminal built, we've got flights coming and going, and bring some folks in as well. Come have some to eat before you hop on your flight. But no, we'll see. I think development's going great. I think we've got in total we probably have close to 60,000, 70,000 square foot of space going up over the next 12 months.
That's awesome. That's a lot of growth in 12 months. That's super cool.
Yeah. So we've got, because Bridgestone's going in, Ponderosa's building 2 more 12,000 square foot hangars over the next little while.
Wow.
We have the T hangars going in. We've got some more private hangars going in, and we're building PHI hangar. We're trying to pursue other options too to bring in more businesses. So it's going well. I'm really hoping the business park continues to grow. We had kind of an initial spurt of growth, which you typically see, and now it's just kind of going to be hunting down and finding those businesses that probably more stuff that's associated with the mine.
Right.
I think it'd be really great if Freeport pursues their plan of putting in a rail spur. because they're looking at putting in a rail spur.
What's that?
Like a rail line.
Oh,
So
okay.
they're looking at putting in a rail line that would actually have to run potentially through airport property.
So like a line going from one
to the other,
to Morenci to Safford, or
So Morenci actually already has a line that actually runs through Silver City. So they're looking at bringing a line up from Solomon, just a short spur that would actually go across the river up the mesa through the past the airport and up to the line to be able to transport ore. So that's why they purchased all that land over by the Dry Lake Rifle Range recently. So they've started acquiring some land, but they either have to go through state trust land or airport property. And we said, hey, we'd be more than happy to have you bring it through, because that's great for our businesses. For even for Bridgestone, instead of having to put all those tires on a lowboy and bring them out, throw them on a rail car and bring them out to the airport. So
that's awesome.
They have a transload site. They're on airport property. So I think be interesting to see how those discussions go for the next few months.
Well, I think one thing's for sure is Safford's going to keep growing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot going on, and it's good to hear. Honestly, I love it. I love that it's growing so much. I love that the airport's doing what it's doing.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited. It's definitely, it makes my job a lot more fun and interesting. You got some airports that just haven't done anything in 20 years and probably won't for another 10 or 20 and are perfectly happy with where they're at.
Right.
But Wilcox is a great example. Not a lot has happened there. Not a lot probably will happen there. They've got a small flight school there, and that's about it. And
that's a shame, because it seems like Wilcox has a ton of potential for growth too, with a lot of the things that are happening there.
Yeah.
Being right on the I-10, and almost say Wilcox has more potential for growth than Safford. But
they do. The only thing they don't have is the money to bring in the businesses.
Yeah.
But from a perspective of just development, they could look at doing warehousing or something like that. They've got rail and they've got the interstate.
Yeah.
That's what you need. But no, I don't think they really pursued it that hard. And I think it's similar to what's happened in Safford, where people don't necessarily want to see the development. But I think the thing they have to consider is the development is inevitable. It's going to happen, because as that mine grows, as
it has to happen.
As operations at Morenci slow and operations at Lone Star pick up, it's going to drive a lot more here. It's going to drive a lot more development here, and the houses are going to come in. People are going to move to Safford, and it's just a matter of, are you going to be there to help guide that development so that it's good for the future of the community, or is it going to be, just something that you're gonna fight and throw up roadblocks that makes it harder, and then in the long term, it's not as beneficial for everybody.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the people that you have making those decisions. Are they going to fight the development, or are they going to encourage it? And I think, fortunately, that it's being encouraged right now, which is good.
Yeah, especially on the Safford side, I will say, obviously I can't speak for the other communities, but I know city management is extremely encouraging of residential development, and want to see more of that happen here in Safford. We've got lots of space. We've got space. Obviously, by the high school is getting developed. We've got space off of 14th Avenue that we want to see developed. We've got, there's a good bit of space inside of city limits that would be great to have some more development in, either, whether it be multifamily, townhomes, apartments, or just, smaller homes. Because the reality is it's hard to find a home here.
Yeah.
I kind of lucked out, but I think, it's really hard to find a home right now. I know we've got some new employees that have been looking for potentially months.
It's a crisis.
Well, anytime it hits the market that's semi-decent in the 2 to 250 range, it's gone immediately, because that's what a lot of people can afford, and there's just not that much out there. So if that's what is needed is that price range.
Oh yeah,
in my opinion.
No, I agree, because that's the folks that are coming in here to work. The folks that are looking for those haul truck driver positions or something like that.
Half of the pre-qualification letters I have out right now are haul truck drivers or somebody like that. That is their price range.
That's what they can afford, and
So because let's be honest, if you have the money to buy a $300,000 to $400,000 home, if you can't find anything, you might look at, I can buy a piece of property and build a house.
That's what's happening a lot too.
Cool, man. Well, I know you've got places to be, but we really appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're a super interesting. The thing we never talked about was how young you are. You've had all these experiences, but you're still in your 20s, right?
Yeah, I'm 25.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. Well, and we were talking before. You're in the Army Reserve. We could have gotten into that. So we'll have to have you in again and talk more because I think that was a great
We
conversation.
just scratched the surface.
Yeah, there's a lot more that we talked about. So yeah, thanks a lot for coming in.
Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
And anything else you want to plug or any? I think we hit a lot of the highlights, right?
No, I think just keep an eye on, go follow the airport on Facebook and Instagram, and we're trying to grow our presence there specifically so we can do a lot more marketing. We look at, getting the word out on stuff for the air show, and if you're interested in sponsoring the air show, let me know.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
Well, I for one am excited that you came and are here because it sounds like you're going to do a lot of great things for the town, and I
didn't realize you're only 25. Yeah, that's awesome. That's super cool. Well,
awesome, man.
cool.
Appreciate you.
Thanks.